Welcome to On the Table with Ashley, a podcast where I explore ways in which we can lead more fulfilling lives and amplify human connection by increasing our curiosity and communicating with less judgment and more respect. It is my pleasure to welcome Eric Mendell to On the Table with Ashley today. Eric is a leading expert in the jewelry and watch industry. He and his brother David are co-owners of Kerns Fine Jewelry. For 80 years, Kerns has specialized in fine jewelry, Swiss timepieces, corporate gifts, and tabletop objects. Eric graduated from the University of Arizona with a BA in political science and has a graduate degree in gemology from the GIA. You can find Kerns Fine Jewelry online at www.kernjewelers.com, on Instagram at Kerns Jewelers, Facebook and LinkedIn at Kerns Fine Jewelry, Pinterest at Kerns Jewelers, and Yelp. Write a review for Eric. The current physical store is located at 214 Lorton Avenue in Burlingame, and appointments are required. And we're going to hear more about two new stores Eric and his brother are opening up in Union Square in San Francisco during this episode. Welcome, Eric.
Thanks for having me, Ashley.
Thanks so much for joining me.
The last time we saw each other was kind of unplanned, but it was nice.
It was. It was impromptu Park City visit by you.
It was great.
So I always like to start just hearing a little bit about where you grew up and what kind of kid you were, what you liked to do when you were young.
So I didn't get too far. I grew up in Hillsborough and Burlingame, which is where Kerns is located now. My dad grew up in Palo Alto, and my mom is from Hillsborough also. What kind of kid was I? I loved sports. I hated school. I don't know if that sounds familiar. I loved to play golf, football. I did Little League, even though I wasn't very good at that. And I also really liked to work, which wasn't like most kids. Not necessarily in the jewelry business, but I had a bunch of different jobs. You can't tell anybody, right? This is not going live, right, Ash? But I started out by working in a hair salon, a ladies' hair salon, as a receptionist and serving emerald dry wine by the glass to the patrons that were waiting for their appointment. I worked on a Budweiser truck. I worked as a cadet in San Mateo because I wanted to be a cop at one point, which led me to working in the harbor patrol over by the fish market in San Mateo. I don't know if you remember that, but I drove a boat out there for 3 summers and kind of patrolled, if you will. What else did I do? I detailed cars. That's about it. And during holidays, I worked at Kerns here for my dad, and I started out by wrapping packages, and I'm pretty good at wrapping packages still.
I'm sure you had a lot of practice. So your interest in working, do you think that came from your parents and like the values that they instilled in you, or do you think it was sort of innate?
No, I think my parents both had tremendous work ethics. I mean, I was to the point, like I hated school so much that I just tried to find ways to get through it. I got involved in student government, right? It was a diversion from the academics. I was in the band. I worked during a brunch period in I don't know what you call it, the little snack shack there selling, drinks and bagels to people. I did whatever I could do to not be in academia. I chose that direction.
And your brother, with whom you run the business now, David, is he older or younger than you? And did he have the same work ethic when you were young?
He absolutely has the same work ethic. He is younger, even though he looks much, much older. Hope you're hearing that, Dave. David actually was a drama major and theater major at USC, and he spent 10 years in New York, starred in 2 shows off Broadway until I gave him the ultimatum that $35 a day wasn't enough, and you're either coming back to Kerns or I'm going to move on without you. And he was back here in about a month.
That is such a good story. What were the plays that he was in?
He was in, the big one was A Stoop on Orchard Street, where I always knew that he could sing and act, but I didn't know he could dance. But he did a pretty good job. And he did a bunch of other smaller shows, but it was really great. Did
anybody in your family sing or act or dance?
Nobody.
That is crazy.
Yeah.
That's an amazing story.
So,
And by the way, we have to keep the hair salon thing, and that's amazing. That
okay.
is so amazing. I love it. I love it. And what's funny is that even from a young age, you were drawn to positions where you had to interact with people, make them happy, selling to them fundamentally, like making sure
Right.
they were happy and comfortable. And I feel like that is something you are extremely good at, and probably a big part of why your family has had such success in this business.
Thank you.
Okay, can you share with our listeners the story behind Kerns Jewelry? So this is what I was able to find on your website. The business was founded in 1944 and then bought by your parents and grandparents in 1972. And then you and your brother became involved in the business. It sounds like you first, and then you sort of brought your brother back full time.
That's true. So Kearns actually started as Bostrom and Kern. There were two partners. And then a few years later, Mr. Kern bought Mr. Bostrom out. And that started in 1944. I think Bostrom was bought out in the early 50s. And then here comes 1972, where my dad wanted to get into the jewelry business. And coincidentally, my grandfather, so this is my mom's father, not my dad's father, was in the jewelry business for years. His name was Al Glass, and he ran K Jewelers for the West. Oh, and he actually put together the sale of selling K Jewelers to, he put the sale together of selling K Jewelers to the Zale Corporation. So that happened, around 1968, I believe, 69, and he retired. Again, coincidentally, my dad wanted to be in the business, and my grandfather was in the business, and my dad wanted to open a store in Burlingame. And my grandfather said, listen, I got a couple bucks and a little bit of know-how, and I'm bored to death. Would you like a partner? And my dad said, that'd be great. So they found a location on Burlingame Avenue, and they were about to sign a lease. And again, this is 1972. It's 51 years ago. So they walked down the street 5 doors to the Kerns and said, hey, I'm Al Glass and Greg Mendell. We just want to introduce ourselves. We are moving down the street and opening a jewelry store. And they said, whoa, 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 whoa. Don't do that. We want out. And 24 hours later, they own Kerns.
That's so crazy.
All over a handshake. And that's kind of how, they got into Kerns.
So I'm going to ask a little bit more about that. But before I do, why do you think, did your dad ever tell you, why did he want to get into the jewelry business? What was it about the jewelry business that was interesting to him? He
was in the pharmaceutical business, and things didn't work out for him. His parents were in commercial furniture and commercial real estate. He didn't love it. He just wanted to do his own thing, right? And he loved watches and he loved people. And it just kind of was happened circumstance, and kind of happened that he fell into the business. He worked for a couple different jewelers, obviously, before he wanted to start his own business. And he loved it.
Interesting. And also so interesting that he worked with your grandfather. So family business has kind of been in the water for a long time, it sounds like.
It was the best of times. It was the worst of times.
Yeah. Well, hopefully we'll hear more about that. So, okay. So, and everybody, I would actually urge people to go to your website and look at the timeline, because it's really, you have some cool pictures, some old pictures on there, which are really fun. And it's just so cool to get to know a family business. I mean, it's one of the reasons, obviously I met you, I don't know, it's been at least a decade-ish. I met you a while ago, and when I first met you, I just thought, that is so amazing. You run this business with your brother. It was a family business before, and you see that less and less. And I do think that people really appreciate that. So I really recommend people go to the website and look at the timeline. It's just gives you a real sense of the history of your business. And one of the things I thought was interesting, because you have sort of the evolution of the business, is that you actually had locations in malls at one point. And you are authorized retailers of both Tiffany & Co. and Bulgari, which I think is fascinating. And I wanted to hear more about both of those things and how you decided, or how your dad and grandfather decided to get out of malls and, you know, into like your own shop, that sort of thing.
So my grandfather, being from K Jewelers and the credit jewelry business, had a lot of experience with malls, and that was kind of
Yeah.
his thing. And my dad was not a mall guy, but we can get to that later. But anyways, you heard how we ended up owning Kerns, right?
Yeah.
Walking down the street and saying hello. Let me kind of set the stage of what Kerns was first in 1972.
Okay.
Okay. I don't know if you remember Chain on a Spindle when you went to like Pier 39 or something like that, and they had the spindles of chain, and you could go out and buy it by the inch. And we had chain by the
Yes.
spindle. We
Did
had
you?
watch batteries for digital watches. We sized Seiko watch straps. I don't know if you can kind of get a picture here of
I'm
what
getting
this
the
was like.
picture.
There were ashtrays everywhere in the store, people smoking.
Could you like open the shell and get the pearl out?
Yes, you could. Basically, you could. We sold out of pearl necklaces where you'd buy one pearl at a time, and 25 years later, your grandmother had a pearl necklace for you.
Wow.
But that's how it was. Kerns was closed the entire month of July, traditionally, when they bought the store. So, I mean, it was a different era, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if you can
Yeah.
imagine someone being closed today for a month. Our
Right.
clients would come in and they'd buy something, and they were very appreciative and happy, but they did not want a Kerns box, right? Do you have a different box you can give us? Because it said Kerns on it, and nobody wanted a Kerns box. Fast forward to, we started on Burlingame Avenue. Then we went to Lorton Avenue. Burlingame Avenue, went to Park Avenue. Now we're on Lorton. And during the Park Avenue and Lorton Avenue days, we have had several different brands. Like you mentioned, Tiffany. We were one of the first non-Tiffany stores to carry Tiffany. We had Bulgari. We had a Bulgari boutique. We had Chopard. And I think all of these brands brought people in, gave us credibility, and put us on the map, right? And we were able to offer that Tiffany bag with purchase, or the Bulgari bag, or the Chopard bag. And but we've come a long way. We went from people not wanting our bags or our boxes to coming in and trying to buy them to put other merchandise in. And it's been kind of fun. But I think those brands really did give us credibility and helped us build credibility over the years.
But they don't do that anymore, do they? Like Tiffany doesn't sell out of anywhere.
Tiffany doesn't sell out of their own stores. Bulgari does. We don't carry Van Cleef. Van Cleef does. Many other, Chopard does. There are many brands that still do. But at the time that we had them, it really helped us kind of define the Kerns brand, or support the Kerns brand.
Yeah, no, that makes sense to me. And then, so obviously now you have a heavy focus on fine watches, including Rolex and Patek Philippe. Did that come later? I think you brought that. Did you bring that to the business?
So my dad and grandfather were lucky enough to get the Rolex brand, I think in like 1974.
Okay, wow.
And which was a big deal, right? And then Patek came along in the mid 80s, I think 1986. And my mom and my dad brought that on after my grandfather was already out of the business.
Okay,
that was a big decision, getting Patek, because my dad was ready to buy a building for Kerns, right? So we had stability and could control our destiny. But one of his best buddies said, "Hey, go after these brands. I know it's a lot of money, but you can never get the brands again. You can always buy another building." And he did, and it was one of the best decisions he ever made.
So how does it work? So one question is, how does it work? Like, you want to work with Rolex or Patek Philippe. Presumably they want to know that you have a certain amount of prestige in your business already, and obviously quality and customer service and all of those elements. And then I don't know how much inventory you have to carry or that sort of thing. So that's one question. And then how did you decide to not carry, for example, Chopard or Bulgari or Van Cleef when you could? Is it like you can't do all of it and you have to make choices, or you focus on what you want the brand to be most known for? Or how did you make those decisions?
So first of all, in terms of developing a relationship with the brands, specifically Rolex or Patek Philippe, I'll give you a quick little story about my mom and dad at the Basel Jewelry Show, which was the most important jewelry and watch fair in the world up until 3 years ago after the pandemic. Now it's no longer there. It's Watches and Wonders in Geneva. But my mom and dad, this is around 1985, we're talking to Hank Ellerman, who's a great friend. He was the president of the company for the U.S. at the time. And they were in great conversation with Patek, wanting to open. And my mom reached into her purse and brought out a catalog of Kerns and a credit sheet that we had. And Hank looked at my mom and dad and said, "Hey, if I needed either one of those two things, you wouldn't be sitting with us right now." So everybody does their homework.
Yeah.
And it is a very small industry. I mean, when I think we started with Patek, there were probably 120 points of sale in the United States. Now there's 40. Rolex
Really?
had well over 1,000, probably 1,200, 1,300. Now they're down to maybe 350, 380 points of sale. So kind of less is more. Experience is everything.
Yeah.
Showing off the families of watches and being able to do that and give the consumer, the best experience possible is really a priority for everyone.
Yeah. And so I'm going to ask you again about like why not do the Bulgari and the Chopard. But
Okay.
yeah, or go ahead and answer that now.
No, I mean, Bulgari and Chopard were great brands to give us credibility. And they were also great, in times that things are so good that you can't get enough product, if you will. Right. And this is nothing against Bulgari, nothing against Chopard, but in 1998, before the dot-com boom, and people were walking in buying 3 and 4 Rolexes at a time, 5 pairs of diamond earrings. I mean, there literally was a shortage of jewelry and watches, at this level of the business and the guild level. There was Chopard with the happy diamonds that float around. There was Bulgari with the tuba gas. But when things kind of blew up, after 2000, there was less demand for it. It kind of served its purpose with Kerns. They're great products, great companies, but we kind of moved on. You can't be everything to everybody, and we chose to be much more specific with Rolex, Patek Philippe, and high-end diamond jewelry.
Yeah. And do you find that that those items are more recession proof? So if people aren't jumping to buy the Bulgari or the Van Cleef or whatever, that they're still coming to get their Rolex or it's like a special gift, and there's
Rolex and Patek Philippe, I would say, are as recession proof as possible. Nothing's recession proof.
Yeah.
But yeah. And again, you just can't. It's better to have fewer SKUs, but be the best at what you can be.
Yeah.
Right. You can't be everything to everybody.
And then I know that you go to Switzerland, I mean, probably several times a year, except during COVID, probably. But so you have an ongoing relationship with these houses. And can you just talk a little bit about that? I think it's so interesting, and it's got to be a fun part of your job.
It's a great part of our job. And Patek and Rolex both are one of the few independent watch companies that are still in existence. Most companies are parts of group, whether they're parts of the Swatch Group or LVMH or Richemont, and there are many different factories sharing parts with each other. They have, you can have the president of one company bounces to the next, to the next, to the next, and with these larger conglomerates, at the end of the day, their goal is for their stock to go up and please their shareholders.
Right.
With Rolex and Patek, Rolex is owned by the Hans Wilsdorf Foundation, which Hans Wilsdorf founded Rolex, and Patek is owned by the Stern family, who's owned it for years and years and years and years and years. And there really is the sense of value, a sense of pride. Relationships are much different when you're dealing with people that, have independence in this industry.
Yeah.
And every decision they make is about making the best quality product possible and getting it, onto the right wrist, not
Yeah.
making as many as possible and as many wrists and ankles and toes as possible to get a watch on.
Yeah. Well, actually, let's talk about that because I know, and I think Patek makes far fewer watches per year than even Rolex, but they both limit production, which I think is to focus on quality. It's like this is how many we feel like we can make at our quality level. Is that the right way to think about it?
100%. I mean, Patek this year will make roughly 70,000 watches for the entire world. 25,000 of those are probably going to be ladies' watches with quartz movements, okay, which the quartz movements are unbelievable. They're made to work like an automatic movement, but there's probably a little bit less labor intensive. So, now you're down to 45,000 watches a year for the world of automatic and highly complicated watches. It's not a lot. But, Rolex doesn't say how many watches they make, but year to
Okay.
year after year, demand's been so great. I know they've been making between 4 and 6% more product every year, but you can't just jump from, A to Z without compromising quality.
Right.
And neither brand will ever do that.
And have you seen when you go back year over year, do you see the same people continuing to work at these companies? Is it more like not family, but more, I don't know, like,
You hit the nail on the head, Ashley. I mean, they are family, and it's so
okay.
wonderful to work in a business like this where you're dealing with family, and
Yeah.
it's special. It's very special, and
Yeah.
everybody, on both sides of the business wants to do the right thing and doesn't want to let each other down. It's a partnership.
Yeah. That's so nice in this day and age. And it's, I think during the pandemic especially, but maybe it's like a social media thing where you were seeing, and we even talked about this, like everybody wanted to buy watches, high-end watches during the pandemic. And there were all these like social media influencers. It was like all bling, and it wasn't about owning it as something you could pass down to your children, which is how I think about it, or something that you just feel like so good when you put it on. It was more about like showing it, which I feel like is really not what these brands are about, but it kind of became that, not just for these brands, but for all of these high-end brands. So have you seen an evolution with social media in terms of what people are interested in, why they want to own a nice timepiece, or in your shop, your family run shop with your brother, is it still more this like, I want to pass this on to, my children or my grandchildren, and I want to, have pride wearing it every day? Or is it a mix of both that you're seeing?
I mean, I think it's a mix of both. I mean, we have always had, people that were true collectors of fine watches, right? We've had, we've always had people that wanted status on their wrist, right?
Yeah.
Not because of what's inside the watch. And
Yeah.
I think the pandemic really, sent that on a trajectory that no one could have imagined during the pandemic with social media. And, people still were making money at home and had nothing to do. So they were buying watches and cars and art, what have you. And there's always been, now there's a whole new movement. I see financial advisors encouraging this. We won't touch this with a 10-foot pole, but there's this whole theory of, buying jewelry and watches and watching the values grow and passing them on to the next generation. And we stand firm saying you buy jewelry and watches because you love them, you want to wear them, you want to give a gift. With Patek, with Rolex, with fine diamonds, and with gilt jewelry, you have a much better chance of not losing money than you would with most purchases.
Right.
I think that's how I would position that.
Yeah. And then the other thing that I saw during the pandemic was it was harder to get a Rolex or a Patek Philippe, and especially if you wanted like a certain one. And I would imagine, I think you said they have 70 points of sale in the United States today or something like that.
Patek has 40.
Yeah. 40. Okay.
40.
So and that's obviously in the United States, they have to deal with the rest of the world as well. But how do they allocate like what inventory you get? Can you request, like I have a client who's a very good client and wants this particular, world time, or they want this particular watch. And do you have the relationship where you can get that? Or sometimes is it, okay, this is what I get, and I can only put in those special requests sometimes?
I think it's all true, right? I mean, we can lobby as much as we can. Obviously, if somebody is a true connoisseur and collector and they have a history with the company, there's going to be an easier, not necessarily guaranteed allocation, but an easier time getting an allocation of something when they have a proven history, right? Okay. They're known for wearing the watches, right? They're not known for buying them and reselling them, right, to make a profit. But we do things the right way, and I think our clients are generally very happy and really taken care of.
Yeah, well, I can vouch for that. Okay, let's see. What do you think? What has surprised you about the change in how people are thinking about and buying fine watches or fine jewelry since you and your brother have been running the business?
I think the biggest surprise is not really how they're buying or not what they're buying. The surprise is actually there's one surprise of what people are buying. Gem set watches and jeweled timepieces, whether they're sapphires, diamonds, emeralds, other colored stones, have become hotter than hot. And I used to think that it was something that only people in Vegas would buy, right? Blingy, but it's become a fashion statement. It's become, some of the most sought after watches on the collector's market. And, that's really changed over the last 10 or 15 years, which has been surprising. Now it's kind of the norm, but it really was surprising. The most surprising thing in my business is when I first started in 1997, everything was romanced over the counter, right? And you sat down and you had a conversation and you had a coffee or a glass of wine and you talked about the product. And things over the last 10 or 12 years have gotten so transactional, and sending a text and I want this, and it's $1 million, or an email and I want this and it's $150,000 and I don't have time to talk, just text me. That has been the biggest surprise, I think, really over my tenure here. But I think Kerns, I think Rolex, I think Patek, I think many other brands are trying to get back to that romance of the industry and, really educate people on what they're buying, why they should be buying, this versus that, having a coffee, having a glass of wine together, and really making it a luxurious experience.
Well, again. And, a lot of what I'm trying to do, both with this podcast and also my brand, Amatand, is focus on human connection. And when you do that, when you sit down and have a coffee or a glass of wine and you talk about this watch versus this watch or these earrings versus that earrings, you are connecting with people. And I would say personally, because I used to live in the Bay Area and now I live in Park City. So I used to come and see you in person. And now I do feel comfortable texting you and saying, hey, I'm interested in X or Y, because we already have that connection. So when people are texting you, I'm interested in this watch or this, is it somebody you've already met and spent some time with? Or sometimes is it somebody you don't know at all?
That's a great point. And, people like yourself, there's a comfort level of texting and talking on the phone and emailing back and forth. There are a lot of people that you meet, and they just want to text, right? They don't want to talk. And I kind of see the way my kids are and how they act and how they converse. And it's unfortunately, I think it's kind of the way of the world today. And but I'm still surprised by the amount of people that just want to get something done versus romance it.
Yeah. Well, I think that will come back. I think things tend to sort of go back and forth.
And I think we're starting to see it a little bit.
So far one way, and I think it will come back, which would be good for all of us because we all need to spend time in person and actually talk to each other.
Right.
Okay. What do you learn? I've never asked this question before. What do you learn in a graduate degree in gemology?
You said it perfectly that time.
You
Gemology.
And how important do you think it is to your business that you have that degree?
So I think years ago it was super, super, super important. It's still important. If you're in the jewelry end of the business, I think it's a rite of passage that you get your degree in gemology. Okay.
Okay.
What is a degree in gemology? It is, it is learning the history and origin of gemstones. It's learning about diamonds and colored stones and being able to grade those stones.
Okay.
And that's kind of a nutshell synopsis of what a GG is. You can take courses in a myriad of different ways. I chose to take this condensed program that was 6 months from 8 in the morning until 5 o'clock at night. Raise your hand to go to the bathroom, security with the diamonds and stones that were in the
I'm
room.
sure.
And that seemed to work for me. Being the student that I was, right, I had to get it done as quick as I can. But no, I think, and now, I have, I think, 11 graduate gemologists on staff. For me to be able to hire somebody to appraise jewelry for me, right? I mean, there's a huge liability there. And I need to understand, who I'm hiring and what they know, during that process. So I would say it's very important for me to have my GG and at least understand it, even though I'm a little bit, probably a little foggy on identifying and grading myself, but we've got great people here that do. So I think that's very important. In terms of the watch business, I don't think it means anything.
Okay.
But if you wanted to go to work for a watch company and source the colored stones or the diamonds for, the dial of the watch, for the bezel, for the bracelet, you got to have your GG, right? I mean, that's the only way to really learn it. And there are other different laboratories out there, but the GIA is the Harvard of the industry, if you will.
Okay.
They're the
No, go ahead.
only institution, whether it's how they teach or, diamond and gemstone reports that are graded, that aim to benefit the consumer, not the retailer or the seller.
Got it. Okay.
So they're very, very, very conservative on their gradings.
Okay. Good to know. So we didn't talk that much about the jewelry part of your business, and I've been in your shop many times. You definitely have estate jewelry. And can you just talk a little bit about how much of your jewelry business is from a brand, quote unquote, versus older jewelry that you've bought and appraised yourself and then are reselling?
So now our watch business is probably about 50% of what we do.
Okay.
We have a strong estate department, like you mentioned, and we're buying things people want to trade in, people want to upgrade their diamonds. There's estates that we buy. We do an auction business. We sell estate jewelry in the store as well. We also do a lot of diamond jewelry, high-end diamond jewelry. And again, Kerns, but for people out there that don't, I mean, we're really a very high-quality guild environment. And we stop where most people stop. We stop where most people start, right? We start, let me say that again. We start where most people stop in terms of quality, right?
Right. Okay.
We also deal with designers all over the world. So I was back in Geneva for Watches and Wonders 2 weeks ago, and we had some friends from Spain, some friends from Italy, some friends from France that we have relationships with, and we bought jewelry. Again, it's kind of like you talk about you and I texting each other because we have this trust and connection and friendship, even though we don't live next to each other. So these people over the years, they can show me a drawing and I'm going to know exactly the quality that we're going to get once it's made. And I trust them. And, we press play and they make it and it shows up 6 weeks later via Brinks at Kerns and it's beautiful. And, but these relationships don't happen overnight. But that's also a big part of our business are one-of-a-kind jewelry pieces that don't necessarily have to be estate, but new.
So you have one-of-a-kind pieces. Do you do them on commission? So I come in and I say, I'm turning 50. I would like X, Y, and Z, and I would like this color stone, and I would like it to be this big. And then a designer or an artist actually designs it and fabricates it. Or do you work with these artists slash designers? You have them fabricate one of a kind pieces, and then you know that you'll be able to sell them to your
We do
clients.
both. We do both.
Okay. Okay.
100%.
So are these designers artists or artists slash jewelry makers, or?
They are, some of them are mom and pop organizations where, the son is trying to hustle and bustle and sell jewelry, where the dad is actually manufacturing and mom is sketching, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then we deal with larger companies that make for Bulgari, that make for Chopard, that make for Van Cleef, that make for, the industry is a small industry, right?
Okay.
So
Yeah.
there are a lot of manufacturing houses that make for many different brands.
Okay.
But we do a lot of Kerns one-of-a-kind pieces that are made by people that make for a lot of these other bigger known entities.
And what percentage of your business is that? I actually was not as familiar with that part of your business.
I think it's not as much in terms of units, but in terms of dollars, it's very high.
Okay. Because they're very special pieces.
Yes.
Yeah. And that's so cool because you can go see those people when you go to Switzerland, then you have a great job.
It's like,
you get to travel amazing places.
No, it's great. And you know what? You deal with people that you want to deal with and that you have fun with and that you trust. And it's fun. It's fun. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah. Okay. Your brother's definitely going to listen to this, so answer carefully. What are the advantages and challenges of working alongside family members in a business setting? How do you maintain a healthy work-life balance when your personal and professional lives are intertwined within a family business? And I'll ask that both for you and your brother right now, but also what you learned from your father and grandfather. And I think your mother was also involved in the business. Is that right?
She was.
Yeah.
My Al Glass and my dad, Greg Mendell, both of their wives actually worked here together. So my mom was working with her mother and her father, and I worked with my mother and my father. It's kind of cool.
Yeah.
No, I would be lying if I said there are no challenges, but I think we have a very, very special situation here where we get along great. We respect each other. We're big enough that, we all have our own duties and we're not on top of one another. Early on, my dad suggested that we hired a family coach. So we had a third party person that kind of talked us through things. And Dad wasn't telling us what to do, but more kind of leading us and suggesting, how things were, in a conversation where we kind of came to our own ideas and judgment and decision of, how to really structure the business. And that was a great exercise. But my brother, David Mendell, is one of the greatest people and partners I think anybody could ever have. And, he's fun. He's trustworthy. I respect him. He's really good at what he does. Probably overqualified and should not be here. I should be flying around on his 747 if he was doing something else. No, but he's great. And David, again, like I said, we each have our own responsibilities. And David's responsibilities really are, finances, advertising. He looks over all of our advertising, budgeting and positioning. All this is going to be changing once we open San Francisco because we're going to need to hire more people because there's going to be a lot more of everything going on. But he's looked over the HR and daily operations. And I have kind of been more of the, buy it, sell it, travel, entertain it, et cetera, et cetera. That said, he gets involved in what I mainly do, and I get involved in what he mainly does.
Right.
And but it's really worked out. But you gotta start with a pretty darn good relationship, or it's tough.
And do you still have the coach?
No, we don't need the coach anymore. But as our kids get older, and if they come in, maybe we'll need the coach. I think his name was Coach Pete.
Okay. All
The
right.
great state of
Well, I'm a
Arizona.
big fan of coaches. So
Yeah.
we have another episode I did with my sister talking about coaching, therapy. I'm in favor of all of it. So I want to talk about San Francisco, and I want to talk about your kids. So let's start with, and I don't know, does David have kids too?
David has two children, Max and Hank, 16 and 13 years old. I've got three, Will, Gus, and Allie, 20, 17, and 16.
And I
And
know
my
we talked
wife,
about this.
Kristen, who thinks that I'm one of her kids too.
I'm not going to respond to that.
Okay.
I'll just say I understand her. So I know we've talked about this once before, and I wonder if the answer has changed, but do you think any of your children will want to come into the business? Have you and David talked about that and how you would structure that? And I mean, with 5 kids, I mean, I don't know if they could all come into the business or not, but also just, are they interested or not?
So to start, I'll say I hope they do.
Yeah.
And we wouldn't be doing these 2 new stores in San Francisco if we didn't think it was likely, right?
Okay.
And it's really, we needed to have a real succession plan in place to make this move, right?
Yeah.
And Will, my 20-year-old, called me about a month ago and said, "Hey, Dad, I'm thinking about signing up for this class about something to do with family business and working in a family business or something of the sort." And I just hung up and told my wife, and I almost started crying. I was so excited.
Oh,
but it's kind of
so
happened
sweet.
organically, right? Versus saying you're coming into this business, which they can do whatever they want. But I sure hope that this is something that they could do. And again, kind of how my brother David and I work, and we have different interests and we have different specialties. I can already see in the 5 grandchildren, they each have kind of a place to go and a specialty that I think they would thrive in, it's exciting to see.
So there would be a place for all 5 of them if they're interested. And you must have had some kind of conversations because the San Francisco expansion, and let's talk about that next, is a pretty big expansion. I was in San Francisco over the holidays, and I saw, I don't know what you call that when they, before you can see the store and they've got something.
A facade.
And it said Rolex and Patek Philippe. They're right next to each other. Is it on Bush?
No, it's on Post Street.
On Post Street.
Corner of
right
Post and Stockton.
Post and Stockton. I mean, prime location. And San Francisco has obviously undergone some challenges, shall we say, especially during the pandemic. And it's come back to a certain degree. I think actually the high-end stores seem to be coming back, but a lot of the other stores don't. So I'm interested in your thought process in expanding there, when you're going to be open, and how will you manage those spaces? I mean, it's not that far from number of miles, but with traffic and everything, the geography is still not that easy.
Mm-hmm. So I do think that San Francisco is on its way back. I have a life in San Francisco. I mean, I spent a lot of time up there, lots of friends. It's not something that's this new endeavor for us. Luxury sales in downtown San Francisco have never been better, right? Okay. And San Francisco gets a lot of bad press, as it should, but so has Los Angeles, so has Chicago, so has New York. You see all this press and you've lived here a long time, and the Tenderloin has always been the Tenderloin, right? The Bayview has always been the Bayview. 6th Street driving into town has always been 6th Street. And that's what you see on the news, and that's what people are just, they won't stop talking about. But if you look around and you look at Union Square, it's coming back. If you look at the Embarcadero, it's beautiful. If you look at, the Marina, Union Street, Pacific Heights, Presidio Heights, you look at, there's so many great areas of San Francisco, and so many great people live in the city, and, business is great in San Francisco, and people want to shop. And we still have travel. We are a local. Go ahead.
People travel to shop in San Francisco, I think.
People travel to shop in San Francisco.
Yeah.
But, one of the things is, in order for us to have gotten more allocation, specifically with, watches, we had to open another location, right? Because that translates into allocation. And there's a need in the Bay Area. I mean, there's millions of people in the Bay Area going from across the Golden Gate Bridge down to Gilroy, and it all flows together.
Yeah. So how much of those stores do you think will be sort of out of town travelers coming in? And because the stores, will they say Kerns and Rolex, or Kerns and, how will that work?
Patek will say Patek, Kerns will say Kerns, but they are both owned and run by Kerns.
Okay.
Did I say that? Rolex will say Rolex.
Rolex will say
Rolex will say
Rolex.
Rolex. Patek will say Patek, but they are both owned and run by Kerns.
Okay. And
Yeah.
I think that helps in terms of out of town travelers, because they come and they just see Rolex or Patek.
Right.
They don't know Kerns
It does. And
necessarily.
look, and tourism is great. I mean, our goal is to get as many watches on local wrists as possible.
Yeah.
And there's not enough to go around. And,
Yeah.
we will do everything we can to make sure that these watches stay local, and especially not leave the country.
Yeah. Well, and I think that'll be super interesting. So your hope, but also your expectation is that you'll have more local clients than tourists.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
That's interesting. Okay.
Yes.
Because, and then are you or David planning to be there regularly? Because I do feel like your presence and getting to know you is part of a long-term relationship for a client of a very nice timepiece.
Yeah, no, thank you. So we just hired a director that will oversee Rolex and Patek, right? Each store will have a manager, right? And then David and I will be there a lot. I mean, at the beginning, I'll be there more than a lot. And my goal is to be there at least, 2 days a week, 2 or 3 days a week, be in Burlingame 2 or 3 days a week. And I know you asked about work-life balance. We're a long ways away from that. So,
well, the good news is that is your wife traveling with you more now since your kids? Wait, your
not yet.
kids? You still have kids in the
yeah.
house.
I still have a sophomore in high school and a junior in high school.
Okay. Well, hopefully once they're off to college, then your wife can come with you on these trips, and it can be, I call it work-life design. So it's like you're on vacation and you're working. Or,
yes. And she's lobbying for a place in San Francisco too. So
smart woman.
Yes.
I like her.
Yes.
Well, and it sounds like it will make sense, because I don't know if you've done that commute every day, but I used to do the commute from San Francisco to Mountain View, and it can be, in Palo Alto, it can be a very long commute. So you're probably going to want the San Francisco place. So it's probably not a bad time to buy in San Francisco, actually.
I think it's a good time.
Yeah. Okay, let's see. From your website, it looks like Kerns Jewelry contributes to a number of local community organizations. Can you talk about how this has evolved, how it's central to your ethos and vision? Was it part of something that your dad and grandfather and grandmother and mom put in place, or something that you and your brother put in place? And then have you and your brother changed it since you took over?
So philanthropy has been very important to my family, starting with both sets of my grandparents, to my parents. My mom, Sue Mendell, was very involved in the Hillsborough Auxiliary to the Family Service locally here, very involved with Mills Peninsula Hospital Foundation, hospice, actually all the local schools. I mean, when I say local, I'm talking Bay Area.
Yeah.
Schools, hospitals. She said, when people come and ask for a donation, it may be small, but never say no. And we don't say no to people. But those charities have all been very important to us. Parka, we've really done a lot with locally, and the list goes on. We give a lot of money to charity, and we do a lot of in-kind donations. David is president of CASA, which the San Mateo County edition of CASA, which they give money to foster parents and people that can help kids that have been abused or have had issues legally in the juvenile system, but he really believes in that. He's also on the Leadership Council. I have been very involved in the 49ers Foundation. You're smirking, but
Well, I don't know what they do.
our goal is to keep kids safe, on track, and in school.
Okay.
And
That sounds good.
it's a great organization. And they give to different schools. They give to different charities. They used to have their own academy. Really a great foundation. In fact, I'm going this weekend to their main event in Carmel Valley to Golden Getaway.
Okay.
Yes. So that'll be good. But no, charity is very important to us.
And that's something that your parents instilled in
Installed
you?
into us, yes.
Yeah.
But you know what? We've been very fortunate, and you know it's fun to give back.
And do you feel like you've instilled that in your children and David and his children as well?
Yes. Our kids have logged many hours doing things that they necessarily did not raise their hand to do.
Yes.
But I think they've got a great feeling inside of warmth with the things that they've done. And
yeah, well, I mean, I think that there's a lot of research that supports that you get when you give. So it's a wonderful thing. And when you have privilege and means, it's really nice to be able to give back as well.
No, it's great. It's a great feeling. And when you see that you've made a difference in somebody's life, I mean, there's not a better feeling in the world.
I couldn't agree more. And I really hope and look forward to seeing your children and David's children get involved with the business and then someday take over. I mean, I think what an amazing story. That's a book or a Netflix show.
Does that mean you'll be texting my kids?
I don't know. I think we're going to have like a chip in our brain and I'm just going to think it and then they'll get the message. We'll have to see what happens. In your opinion, what are the key ingredients for sustaining a successful family business over the long term?
In my opinion, you have to have the right family, number one. You have to, right? I mean, most family businesses do not last to the second generation, and almost no family businesses, I don't know if that's right, if I said that properly, most don't survive the second generation, and almost none survive the third generation.
Yeah.
So, but you've got to have people that respect each other, people that are smart, people that you can trust.
Yeah.
What's been very effective for us, is my dad did not put us in a position at work because our last name was Mendell. It's because we achieved something, and there's kind of a merit system in place, right? And, my brother and I had to earn our stripes and lead by example. And I think we earned respect of our coworkers and our employees by, doing what we did. I mean, I was out sweeping the floor on the first day of work. I was cleaning a toilet if there was a problem. I was wrapping packages. I was washing windows. I was driving down to, Big Five Sports to go buy a rubber watch strap for someone that we didn't have in stock, but my dad wanted to get it on Mrs. Jones's doorstep by 6:00 at night. I mean, we did it all, but you got to have that motivation, and you have to have the drive and the respect between all family members to make it work. And it's magical when it works, but I understand why it doesn't always work.
Yeah. Do you have any? Well, I guess you did just kind of give advice to people who are considering joining or starting a family business, but maybe you have some other sort of tips, like even for your children or David's children. Are you going to ask them to go through an exercise, not just in terms of do they have the skills to join? Because I'm sure you said they each have, elements that you think that they could contribute, right. But what they should think about before making the commitment to join, and how you think about, what that becomes as a whole, because every time somebody joins, things change, right?
Right. So when I graduated from the GIA, the Gemological Institute of America, my dad said, "So what are you going to do?" I said, "I guess I'll give it a try." And he said, "That's great." I said, "When do I start?" And he said, "As soon as you get yourself a job." And I said, "Well, I thought I had a job." And he's like, "Nope." He's like, "You got your degree in gemology." And he said, "Why don't you work for another jewelry company or another retail operation for 2 or 3 years, get some experience, learn what to do and what not to do, make some mistakes. And, then, we'll talk about you coming back to Kerns." And I said, "Come on." He said, "Nope." So 2.5 years later, I'd worked for Ben Bridge in Cerritos, California. And I worked for Morgan and Company Jewelers in Westwood, California.
Okay.
And I had a friend that was going to Argentina to live for a year. So I called my mom and dad and said, "Hey, I'm moving to Argentina for a year." And they said, "You can't do that." And I said, "Why?" And they said, "Because we have an opening at Kerns." And I said, "Well, I'll take that opening when I get back." And they said, "It may not be here when you get back." And so I came up to Burlingame instead of going to Argentina. But, it wasn't an option to just come into the business. And my kids will have to do the same thing. But you will, my advice is you're going to get frustrated. I mean, no matter what, and you have to be patient. I mean, I can tell you that after a year and a half of working here, I started going to night class, and I took the Anthony School of Real Estate to try to get my commercial real estate license, because this was so terrible, and dealing with some family and et cetera, and blah, 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 blah. I never took the test, but my wife and I got into flipping houses from it, and we did, I think, 12 different houses.
Oh, wow.
And had, some couples go to movies, right? We put floors and painted and things like that. But it was fun. But again, and it was kind of like what I did in school. I tried to find a way to make the best of a situation and get through it.
Yeah.
And so to people going into family businesses, and you get rough spots, or you're going through rough spots, rough patches, try to find something that's going to help you get through it, because if you get through it, things are going to be great.
Yeah. Yeah. And maybe get a coach.
Get a coach.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay, before we move on, and I want to talk a little bit about the gifts that I sent you, and then I have 5 questions I ask every guest. Is there anything that I haven't asked you about Kerns, about your family business, that you would like to share?
What would I like to share here? I talked to you about kids coming in. I think I just talked about getting frustrated. I made some notes here. Sorry.
Yeah, no.
Stick with it. You're going to get frustrated. Put your head down and worry about what you can do to be the best you can be. And don't worry about what other people are doing, or what other, in my case, it's jewelry. So I don't care what the guy's doing around the corner, or the guy in LA or New York is doing. I'm just going to do the best that I can do for me and my community here, and not worrying about others. Especially younger people coming into the business, into a family business, and they see people, gain tremendous success, especially quickly, and they've got their friend has a new Porsche, or they bought an airplane, or they're going here on vacation, or this or that, and thinking, what am I doing? Did I do the wrong thing? I mean, I had friends that were in tech, financial services, thinking to myself, I went into the wrong business. Well, I put my head down. I was patient. I got through the tough times, and, did the best I could do. And, I'm doing better than a lot of people that I was envious of years ago. Right. Yeah. And it's just stick it out. And I don't care if you're a jeweler or a teacher or a fireman or in tech, just be the best you can be, and good things are going to happen. I think that's my main message.
That's a pretty good message. That's a very good message. So I do want to talk a little bit about the gifts that I sent you from my store, Amatand. So I sent you 4 of our smoke crystal tumblers. These are made, it's a collaboration with a small family-run glass company in the Czech Republic called Klimchi, and it's our own design. So cocktail glasses in the United States have like heft, and you kind of feel it in your hand. It's different in Europe. Their cocktail glasses are not quite as heavy. So we came up with a new design with like a half an inch of what they call ice on the bottom, and it's hand blown. They have beautiful colors. So we've started with just 3. We have clear, a beryl green, and the smoke color that I sent you. They can go in the dishwasher as well. So everything that I'm making, I'm trying to make beautiful but also practical, so it can go in the dishwasher or the microwave, and so they're easy to use. And then I also sent you some of our cocktail napkins. Which is really how I started with my brand. I really wanted to come up with hopefully positive but not cheesy sayings on cocktail napkins, because you see so much like wine o'clock, and nobody needs that. So would love to get any feedback you have on what I've sent you if you've had a chance to use them. Because we are designing our own products, it's really helpful to get feedback because we can iterate on them, because we do pretty small production at this point.
So let me start by saying I love to make money and I love to spend money, but I hate to waste money. And I am the king of using a paper towel and folding it as a cocktail napkin. And my wife gets so mad at me. So when I brought home your cocktail napkins, she was so excited. She thought I turned over a new leaf. And so that's a number one. And I thought that the napkins that said time is more important than timing were very apropos to the jewelry and watch business, which we love.
Yes.
Anyway, the cocktail napkins are great, and I'm not kidding about the paper towel habit that I have. But I think because of you, I may change that habit.
Great.
The glasses I did not like, and I just have to be honest.
Yeah.
I got so hungover when I poured a vodka in one of those glasses that I think I had 2 glasses. So I'm mad at them, but they're beautiful. I love holding them in the hand. Honestly, they're beautiful. The heft that you talk about is great. I didn't know that you could put them in the dishwasher. I did anyway, and they seem to be fine. I don't think about things like that. I probably should. But no, in all seriousness, I mean, the glasses are great. I think the napkins are great. And I'm excited to see what your next project is.
Well, those glasses are great when you put a big ice cube in it, if you do something like, because it takes up a lot of the volume. But it's funny because we have thought about doing a smaller glass as well, because I do think
the glasses are perfect. They're perfect.
Okay, well, thank you for that feedback, and I'm really glad to hear that you're enjoying the cocktail napkins. So at the end of every episode, I like to ask my guests the same 5 questions. So the first one is, as we explore in my brand, Amatand, objects can hold a lot of meaning for us, and they can tie us to the past, enable us to enjoy the present moment more, and even take us into the future. Can you share an object from your life, whether you still have it or not, that holds a lot of meaning for you, and tell us why? And before you answer, I'm going to say, and I've never done this, but you helped me with an object or 2 objects that were old watches of my father's, who's passed away. It will be 10 years in September. And you completely reworked the watches. I mean, they are gorgeous. And my sons each have one of those watches. And for me, it is a way that I take something from the past and bring it into the present and even into the future. So I'm so grateful to you for helping me with that, because every time I see them wear those watches, it's just like, I'm going to cry right now. It's just like memories. And I say, like, objects can be vessels for memories, and watches, I think in particular, can do that. So that is just a story that I wanted to share. And now I would like to hear yours.
So that was a great intro. And I'm going to piggyback off of you with this. So when my Al Glass, my grandpa, when he and my dad got the Rolex line in, the early 70s, they both bought a gold Rolex date watch on a gold bracelet. And I remember seeing that watch on my grandfather his entire life. And he was more than just a grandfather, right? Parents worked very hard, but my parents were great parents too. But my grandfather would show up, see out of the corner of my eye at a golf match or a football game, or he was always there. And he didn't have a son, so I was kind of David and I were both sons to him. Anyways, fast forward, he wore this watch every day of his life, and I just remember seeing that watch on him. And the day that he died, I was at the hospital with my grandmother. She pulled it off his wrist, gave it to me, and he'd already had his initials put on the top and my initials underneath. And I never cried harder in my life. And so I have this watch today that my wife has kind of stolen and had the band shortened on. But we had a family event last weekend, and she wore it, and I saw her rubbing it, during the event. So like you say,
yeah,
it's pretty cool.
It's a very beautiful
I'm in a
story.
business, that I'm very lucky because so much of what we deal with are family heirlooms or can be family heirlooms, right?
Yeah.
And, when somebody passes, unfortunately, and you get, you see your bank account go up, that's great, but what does it mean? Nothing, right? But to have something like this, if you ever need support or you need comfort and you can rub your ring or rub your watch or look at and my kids want this watch. It's going to be a fight, but probably go to my daughter.
Well, okay. First of all, you've just said that on the air, but second of all, I'm actually doing a couple of episodes in September on death and dying and like preparing for death to honor my father on the 10-year anniversary of his passing. And I'm having somebody come on who's going to talk about what are called ethical wills, where you actually like describe like why I gave this watch to my daughter and why this is going to you, my son, and my other son, and kind of tells the story of those reasons so that there's not like hurt if somebody gets something and somebody doesn't, and that they can understand it. And hopefully you have enough beautiful heirlooms that you can spread that around, and I'm sure you do. So that probably will be less of an issue for you than it is for other families.
I just want a lot of time before we start giving these away.
Yes. Although there's also, and I'm going to forget the word for it, but there's this Swedish word, which is basically like as you older than we are, but when you start to get older, you actually start to give away your things so that it's not actually when you die and that you're dying with much less, which I think is actually a lovely concept and idea.
No, and you get to see these people enjoy what you're giving them.
Yeah. So anyway, long way away either way. Can you share a favorite tradition? It could be from when you were young or something you do with your wife and children today, something to do with the family business, anything at all.
Traditions. Hawaii was very special to my family growing up, and that's kind of become a tradition for our family. I haven't been able to do as many family trips as we used to, but we used to pop over to Maui a couple times a year. We rented the same condo. It was the same. It was just our special place. And it was a place that, my phone went off. I looked at it in the morning once and at night once, and my kids were happy. Kristen was happy. Everybody was happy, right? Yeah. Maybe that was the last time we were all happy. I don't know. I'm just kidding. No. But that was a tradition that, and I can't wait to go back. Another thing, it's all about family time together, right?
Yeah.
And your products are all about entertaining and encouraging people together and family. 49er games are near and dear to our heart. And it's not because I love the 49ers so much, which I do, and my whole family does, but it's one of the only things that when everyone gets an invite, everybody's there. Everybody's at the tailgate. Everybody's sitting together. Everybody's cheering together. Everybody's happy, hopefully, at the end of the game too, right? But it's just something that our traditions are about getting people together and having something that everybody enjoys.
Yeah, I love that. Well, this is not directly related, but are you in a phase in your life where you enjoy entertaining in your home? Why or why not?
Too much. And I grew up, my mom was the ultimate entertainer. And give us a reason, we'll have you over. We've got the wine, the barbecue's going. Well, call in a caterer if we need to, but it could be the Academy Awards or a sporting event or celebrate somebody's achievements or Tuesday night. Boy, did we have a Tuesday night the other night, and we used your glasses. So that was a rough Wednesday morning, but it was. And anytime, and I think that's partly why I love doing what I do, because I do so much. I'm not trying to entertain people, but it's just I like to entertain. I love to dine. I love to talk. I love to, share. Share is a word.
You like to be with people, and you connect very well with people. So that makes sense that you would like it and that you've always enjoyed it. Okay. Do you have one or two top resources? It could be books or websites, podcasts that you can recommend to our listeners. And it could be about jewelry or family business, but it could be about football. I mean, it could be really about anything.
I mean, I have a very short attention span. How long have we been on this podcast here? Hour. Oh my gosh. But, I love to read, but I get so tired when I finally let my guard down and I fall asleep. So I'm much more into reading, either short stories or articles or, I hate to say it, but it's Google. And I go to Google and I go to the news and I go to trade type websites for help, but I need to get into. Sometimes if I have a golf match, I'll look up, instruction for golf, and that usually screws me up more than I was before. But what are you gonna do?
Okay, last question. What do you do for yourself? Do you have a practice, a focus, a habit, or a daily routine that you adhere to that contributes to your success and or your well-being?
So, a habit that I have that I would like to recommend is old school. You're an attorney.
Yes.
Okay, by trade.
Yes.
Did you ever use those big legal size pads of paper, or do they just call them legal size pads of paper?
No, I've used them.
You use them. Okay, so I have one. I've got them all over my desk here. Every morning I make a list of what I need to do for the day or for the week. And I can put this in my phone, on my calendar. I can do that. It doesn't mean anything. I make a list on this legal size pad of paper and I check things off as I go along. And if I put it on a legal size pad of paper, I'm going to get through everything that day. If I don't have it on that pad, it's not going to happen. And if I get through everything, it's usually a pretty good day.
Yeah. That's wonderful and very old school.
And that's something my kids haven't picked up on yet that I'd like to instill in their brains, but we have time.
Yeah. Well, and hopefully they'll listen to this and then they'll start. And
writing a thank you letter.
Thank you.
Nothing goes further than writing a thank you letter.
Well,
when people remember.
I had another episode with a woman named Rahila. She's amazing. And she talked about earlier in her career writing a thank you letter to somebody, much more senior who took her out to lunch. And it turned into this beautiful decades-long friendship and mentorship relationship because she took the time to write the letter. And I think, but more importantly than that, and you may not know this, but my mom had a stationery and gift store when I was growing up. So was very big also on thank you letters and, appropriate invitations and getting the language right and all of those things. And I'm actually going to have some thank you notes as well in my Amatand line, but just even today, and maybe especially today when so few people do it, it will make you stand out. And there's nothing like getting that handwritten thank you note.
I enjoy going to the mailbox every day, unless there's bills. I like the thank you letters and invitations much better. So.
Well, Eric, this has been amazing. Thank you so much for joining me and spending this time. And the fact that you don't like to do things for a long time, well, you did wonderfully. And I've learned so much, and it was just wonderful talking with you.
Well, thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening to an episode of On the Table with Ashley. Subscribing to, rating, and reviewing our podcast helps us to continue to record great interviews. So please subscribe, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts. If you're interested in learning more about the products we talked about on the show, visit amattendre.com. That's AMEATENDRE.com to check them out. When you become a member by sharing your email on our website, we'll share special discounts that relate to products discussed on each episode. Finally, email us at reachoutanytime@amattendre.com with thoughts you have or ideas for topics or guests for future episodes. Thanks for listening.